Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm joined here today by a special guest, Helen Glynn Jones. She's also represented by my agent, Laura Bennett, and we're going to have a chat, get to know each other. She's going to tell us all about her writing and how she ended up signing with Laura. So let's go. Right, thank you so much for joining me today, Helen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me, Simeon. It's nice to be here.
So, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your writing?
Okay, so I've been writing for other people for probably close to 2 decades now. I used to work in advertising years ago, but I've always enjoyed writing, and just through sort of a series of events, ended up writing for other people, doing like magazine content, blog content, social media stuff, that kind of thing, which I did for a few years. But I'd always had an idea to write my own book. So yeah, I'd say probably just over 10 years ago, I sat down and started writing a story, and I kind of haven't stopped writing since then. I still do work for other people. You know, I do ghostwriting stuff and co-author things and content and all that kind of thing. But yeah, the passion is writing my own stories now. Great.
That's amazing. How long do you think you were sort of noodling with that idea before you actually sat down and wrote the story?
I think probably a year or two that I was kind of making notes and stuff, but it coincided with us actually moving. My husband's Australian. I was living there, moving from Australia back to the UK. So I kind of had this big move and a small child and stuff. So it was kind of like once the dust settled, then I could sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write my story now.
That's brilliant. And when we were chatting just before we turned the camera on, I asked about your dragons, and you told me a bit about them and kind of where you come from. Would you mind telling us a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I love dragons, and that's my Welsh heritage coming through. My family are pretty much all Welsh. My mum's family's from North Wales, and we've got family there still. And my dad's from Cardiff. And I was just very much brought up in that Welsh culture. We always had family holidays in Wales when I was a kid, and I just love dragons. I just think they're great.
Who doesn't love dragons?
Who doesn't like a dragon? What's not to like?
Did you enjoy Game of Thrones style dragons, or do you like a bit of a friendlier dragon?
I loved Game of Thrones. I mean, we won't talk about the last season, but
we won't
talk about that. But I loved it. I thought it was great up until that point that we won't talk about.
Yeah, it's such a shame, but that could be a podcast in and of itself. That last season.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're not ghostwriting for people, what style of thing do you tend to write?
So I'm pretty much fantasy. I always have been. I think that's the stories I grew up reading, and it just seemed natural to write in that vein myself. And I think also that is, I have had a lot of strange and wonderful experiences in my life, so I kind of try and bring a little bit of that magic to the page. And yeah, so fantasy, young adult to crossover to adult, high fantasy, portal fantasy, urban fantasy, if I started to write a story about like two people who ran a shop, magic would suddenly appear in it. That's just how I write. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you and I are of a kind with the urban fantasy and the portal fantasy. I've never been very good at high fantasy, though. There's so much world building involved. Do you find that hard to write?
I think I've been fortunate. I mean, I think I've been fortunate. I don't know how it is when the stories come to me, like the world kind of takes shape as I'm writing it, and I'm not going to say it's an unconscious process, but things present themselves that feel right. I go with my gut. I'm like, is this going to fit in with this world? Is it not going to fit in with this world? Is it different? Is it similar to other worlds? A lot of the times, things I might be writing as well, like the story that got me signed with Laura is actually set in London, but like thousands of years in the future. So it kind of is high fantasy because it's another world. It's a completely different place at that point. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, but also kind of sci-fi as well, I suppose.
Yeah, it does have that story does have an element of sci-fi in some of the tech that kind of has been fused with magic to create, a society of winged warriors, basically. So that's,
Oh,
that's
that
what that
sounds really
story's
good.
about.
That sounds
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so who would you say your main writing influences are?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was like, I used Alan Garner, Ursula Le Guin, C.S. Lewis. They were like the big
Yeah,
ones. And Susan Cooper's Darkest Rising series is just such an influence. Like she's such a beautiful writer in terms of her prose, but the way she wove the legends of the British Isles, like I think this is such a place that is filled with myth and legend, and the way she wove those stories, the history and the legend, into those wonderful books, that's remained a big influence on me. So that was like when I was a kid. And I used to also when there wasn't really YA sections in the library, and I remember going to the library, and one of my favorite books to take out, which I read several times, was 50 True Tales of Terror, which was this absolutely gruesome book of horrific things that
yeah,
actually happened to people. So I think there's a little bit of that gruesomeness that comes into my work as well. And then nowadays I really like Leigh Bardugo, and Naomi Novik is
yeah.
a real favorite. I love her work. I think it's Alice Henry who did the Alice in Wonderland retelling that was excellent.
Ah, I've not read
Yeah,
that.
that's fantastic. Yeah, so that's kind of Leigh Bardugo. I did enjoy the Grishaverse. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, she's an absolute rock
When I
star.
was a bookseller, we sold so many copies of Six of Crows because people would come in and they go, "Oh, can you recommend like a good sort of fancy? It's kind of exciting, And I'd just be like, Six of Crows.
The Crows, yeah, I enjoy
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I actually based the pitch for my first book on the pitch for Six of Crows, but I did like a funny version of
Oh,
it.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that book. What do you think of Susanna Clarke? I did it backwards. I read Piranesi first, and then I finished Strange and Norrell. But talking about writers who weave English mythology into their
Do you know
works.
what? I'm ashamed to say I have not read either of those books. They're on my very, very large reading pile, but I haven't got there
Yeah,
yet. But yeah, she is on my list of books to read.
I think you'd love her. I've never read Susan Cooper, so I'm going to have
Yeah.
to go and try some of hers. Would you recommend one for me?
Well, she did this. She basically did. It's called the Darkest Rising sequence. So the first one is called the
Yeah.
Darkest Rising, and start there. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because you've got, it goes
Okay. I
into
will.
Wales, and yeah, it's King Arthur, and like all of it's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think there are enough books with Welsh mythology, Scottish mythology, and Irish mythology because it's such a deep
Mm.
resource that doesn't seem to be tapped
Yeah,
enough.
very deep, very
Um,
rich history in all those places. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and good storytelling tradition as
Mm.
well. Not to go off on a tangent, but because Britain didn't have writing until the Romans came, I think there's kind of an innate storytelling culture to the British Isles that kind of endured.
Yeah, as if you were a bard, you had to memorize everything. That was the thing. It was a oral
Yeah,
storytelling tradition.
what a job to be a bard,
Ah,
eh? I
traveling
love that job.
around.
Traveling around, annoying everyone. Yeah, that'd be great. So the reason we're doing this show is because we have an agent connection, but I'm just kind of meeting all the people Laura's repping. So could you tell us the story of how you came to sign with Laura?
Yeah, so I queried for a long, long time. I queried like 5 books, and I never seemed to quite be in the right place with the right agent and the right book at the right time, kind of thing. Because that's a huge part of the process. And I think people don't talk about that
Oh
enough.
yeah.
It's not a meritocracy at all.
Oh no, there's a lot of
Yeah,
luck,
like you have to be
definitely.
good. Yeah, of course you have to be a decent writer, but there's a lot of being in the right place at the right time. So anyway, I spent a bit of time on Twitter, and there was a pitch. There was a new pitch thing up called Mood Pitch, where you put up a mood board
Yeah,
and with a
yeah,
pitch for your story. And Laura liked my pitch. And funnily enough, I'd actually scheduled a 1-to-1 with her the following week with through I Am in Print. I think it was one of those ones.
yeah.
And so when she liked it, I messaged her and I said, "Well, I'm actually speaking to you next week." And she said, "Okay, cool." So we chatted then the following week, and she liked my initial, query package and asked for the full, and then that was it. She sent me a note and said, "Are you free for a call?" And I was like, "Oh, is it the call?"
Yeah, I think I could be free. Yes,
I think I am free for that call. So so I signed with her it's almost a year since I signed with her now. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, and congratulations. And how nice to get to talk to her before the call as well.
Yeah, it was really cool actually, to just kind of get an idea of how she worked and the kind of things I could expect. It was really nice. Yeah. How about you? How did you do it?
So actually, kind of a similar to you, but in a roundabout way. So I was doing a lot of pitch contests, and I was getting likes, but I wasn't getting a lot of full requests. And I kind of broke down and decided to pay for an agent one-to-one session, and that session was with Laura, and she gave me some really nice feedback and kind of seemed interested in the book, but she was about to go off on maternity leave, so nothing ever happened. I signed with a different agent while she was off on maternity leave, and then that agent decided to leave agenting about a year later. So I went to Laura. I said, "Look, I know it's been a while, but would you still be interested?" And she was like, "Yeah, send me a new one." And she liked my new one, so luckily that worked out. But right place at the right time, though.
Yeah, it was obviously meant to be for you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it was. Like she said the same thing. Like we always felt like we kind of got away from each other. So what are you working on this year? What are your kind of writing goals for the year?
So my writing goals for the year, I've got. So Laura's got a couple of things from me at the moment. There's another book which I started a few years ago, and I went back to it and I pitched it to Laura and I said, "Look, I should finish this," and she's like, "Yes, do this one next." So that is kind of, I suppose it's an urban fantasy, and it's set on the coast of California. So I'm going to be working on that. I actually have a YA series of self-published books, fantasy books that they do all right. And I've got to do the 6th and final installment of those. I've really got to do it. It's so overdue. People are waiting.
Tell us what they're called. What's the series called?
It's the Ambeth Chronicles. The first one is called Oaken Mist, and it's portal fantasy. It's young adult, but there's a lot of adult themes in it as well. There's a lot of sort of tangled family relationships and secrets and death and loss and love and all those things in it, and sort of mixed up in the idea of choice and humanity and the battle between light and dark, and the fact that you need both, frankly.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Okay, afterwards, give me the details, and I'll put a link down below for anyone who wants to have a look at that series. I think I'll have a look too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I will do. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, so I need to finish that this year and get it out because, people are going to forget that the books exist at this point because it's been so long. I've got a few other things I'm working on. I've got a client project, but I'd really like to sign a book deal. That'd be nice this year as a writing goal.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, that would. That's a good goal. I think. Yeah. Okay. So, we've already gone quite long. So I'll ask you 2 more quick questions. Yeah, it's been a great chat. Can you tell me what's the kind of best bit of writing advice you've ever received?
Yeah, this is a tough one, to be honest, because I think, in terms of craft, was probably to do with just pacing. I think I used to just write things as they kind of came to me, and I just chuck in scenes. I'd be like, "Oh, I need this scene, I need that scene," and then somebody kind of said, "Yeah, there's actually an act, a sequence." You're probably you are kind of following it, but there's things you can do to tighten up the pacing, and that's probably made the most difference to my writing, is the pacing, because I do tend to overwrite. I write far too much and then I have to cut it all back. So
that's interesting.
Pacing and the way that different genres are structured a little bit differently as well, and it's just understanding that structure and sort of how you can work within it as a writer to tell the story to its best in its best light. And I think that's probably the best bit of writing advice I've had. And the other one is like when you're querying that comps don't have to be the same as your book, they just have to have a similar element. That was a really big one for me because
Yeah,
I hated finding comps. It's like the hardest thing to do.
me
I
too.
was just like, but
Yeah,
there
it's a
aren't any
nightmare.
books like mine. And then I go, oh,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
that one has a romance like mine, and that one has kind of a warrior thing like mine. So when someone said that to me, I found that quite liberating.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's an amazing tip that makes all the difference. And agents use it as well when they go out to publishers. I've noticed they'll
Yeah,
say, you know, the romance of this meets the I don't know, tone of
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah. And I never got that in all the years of querying. I'd be like trying to find books that were like mine, and I'd be like, well, I can't because this is my book. But yeah, once I
Yeah.
realized it was to do with themes and elements, I went, yeah, cool, I got it.
So final question, what are you reading at the minute?
What am I reading? I'm reading This Is How You Lose the Time War at the moment, which is beautifully written. The prose is just stunning. And I also have a proof copy of Fair Rosaline, which is it's Fair Rosaline. She was Romeo's love before he met Juliet, so it's her story, and she
Oh,
was Juliet's cousin, so it's her story. I've only just started that, and it's quite good. I usually have a couple of books on the go at once, so those two I
yeah,
can
me too.
remember. Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing. That's a really good concept, actually. I'd never thought of that. Romeo and Juliet, but not Juliet.
yeah, yeah. And apparently Romeo is a bit of a player, so it'll be interesting
Oh,
story
really?
and see where she goes with it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading
Oh,
that.
oh, that sounds amazing. And thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and absolute best of luck with your writing goals this year. So, Helen Glynn Jones, everyone, thank you for coming and please do check out her books.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been lovely to meet you and have a good chat too. Hopefully, we'll meet in person at one point. That'd be
Yeah,
good.
hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully. Okay, take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Simeon. Bye.